Regular.
Regular.
I heard something else. Okay. Congress over the summer when they were really sort of ramping up the discussion. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Autoblack. If you don't know, Autoblack is a discussion-based podcast hosted by five Black architects, and I'm one of your hosts. My name is Robert, and as always, I have my friends with me. So today we have Whitney,
Hi.
we have Perla,
Hola.
we have X,
What's up? How you doing?
and we have Jamar returning with his very bright and very flamboyant shirt.
I just want to let it be known because I don't want y'all to think I'm nasty. We recording 2 in a day, all right? So this is the same shirt. All right, same shirt. We not nasty. I'm not nasty, and I'm sorry I went to change the shirt.
This is a week later from the previous discussion.
It's the same day, damn it. Everybody look the same.
We got to keep this on. No. You just tell.
Nah, Jamar, you just dirty. Thank y'all for joining us. If this is your first time being with us, welcome. If you've been with us before and you're back with us again, welcome back. Autoblack is, as I said, a discussion-based podcast, and we get on this podcast on this virtual stoop, and we talk about whatever we want, from politics to culture to design, and we do it through a unapologetically Black perspective, filtered through the lens of architects. So, what's going on, everybody? Today we have one of our episodes that is becoming sort of a staple. It's one of our freestyle episodes where we just basically, one of us will share something that is of interest that we may have read, that we may have watched or listened to, and it's allowed us to pontificate deeply on the subject matter. And none of us really know what the topic is except the person who's going to be sharing, and then they kind of share their thoughts. They pose a thesis statement or a question, and we just flow from there very organically, and we just freestyle. It's just like jazz music. We don't know what it's going to be. We're just going to do it. And so today we have our very own Whitney, who will be sharing something of interest that has made her consider things in a very deep and thoughtful way.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So we're going to talk
No
about...
pressure, though. No pressure, Whitney.
Huh?
No pressure, because you said
I know. So we're going to talk about Beloved by Toni Morrison. It was written in 1987. I don't know. Have any of you read it yet? No. Okay.
Perla doesn't read.
I will cut you. Anyway, I read a few Toni Morrison books. I think Beloved was probably one of the books I didn't finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know why?
And go on mute.
No, I'll say that I finished the last, I think it was 70 pages yesterday, because it got to a point where I was just like, okay, this is so not depressing, but it was just like so down that I had to stop it. I was like, when is the story going to end type of moment. But I finished. It did, pick up a little, so that was good. I'll give a general description of the story, so we're not giving any spoilers necessarily to anyone. But some background for the book is it's based during or after the American Civil War. And so it tells the story of a dysfunctional family of formerly enslaved people whose Cincinnati home is haunted by a malevolent spirit. The narrative of Beloved derives from the life of Margaret Garner, an enslaved person in the slave state of Kentucky who escaped and fled to the free state of Ohio in 1856. And so if you don't know about Margaret Garner's story, she also went by Peggy. Her and her family fled from slavery, but then were captured by the U.S. Marshals after the U.S. Marshals broke into a cabin where she had barricaded her and her children, and she was attempting to kill her children after killing her youngest daughter already, in the hopes of sparing them from being returned to slavery. And so the trial lasted for 2 weeks, and she and her family were ultimately returned to their masters as The law of Kentucky and the U.S. made it a question of property under the Fugitive Slave Act rather than murder. And so Toni Morrison has been quoted to say that not only Margaret Garner's story, but the story that she wrote, Beloved, is in the interest, or the interest is not the fact of slavery. The interest is what happens internally, emotionally, psychologically when you are in fact enslaved, and what you do in order to transcend that circumstance. And so, my first question for you guys, without getting too far into it, is how far would you go for love? Like, meaning, what's the one thing you would do for love that would potentially scare others? Or how far would you go to protect the ones you love?
That's a deep question.
I know. Essentially jumping off for the first question.
That's a deep question. I mean,
What is love? That's the question.
Well, how do
Right?
you define love, Jamar?
I don't love anybody. All right, now y'all gets no love in my book. Nah, that's a really deep question. No, I'm not gonna lie. That might be too deep for me to think with my little pea brain.
I'll tell you this. I mean, obviously, we've all experienced love into some capacity. You know, whether that be from family, whether that be romantically. Um, I will a love that I had that I'm still new on. That has really challenged me in a lot of ways is the love of a parent to their child. I have a 2.5 year old, and so um, that has been a different kind of love that is it was strange at first, right? Because when he was first born, um it was this little baby that was didn't really have their pigmentation, looked kind of weird coming out the womb, and I ain't never met him before, and like, I knew he was like mine, and so like there was this immediate sense of love, right? But then I even started to like, do I like what is this love? Like, I don't know. I've never spoken. I don't know this kid. Like, what is this love? And, it has been something that has like, I mean, there's nothing that I won't do for him. Like, the love, when they say that that's a love between a parent and his child is like unexplainable, it like really is. Like, I love him because he's mine. And there's nothing that I won't do because he's mine. And the what's interesting is that it actually has built my faith in a way, because now I understand the love of God, because he loves me not because what I do, not because what I can provide, not because the works that I've done. He loved me because I'm his. And like that has been something that has been really interesting to experience. And like there's really nothing that my son can do that will not make me love him.
That sounds like a true definition of love in an unconditional sense.
I don't know
Anyone
about
else?
nothing. If he becomes a Dallas Cowboys fan, I don't know.
Listen, his mom is
That's a real
his mom
possibility.
was a Cowboys fan, and I still love her. That's her only flaw. That's her only flaw. But
Wow. So I asked you guys that question because there's a lot to the story. Toni Morrison puts you into the perspective truly of what you can't imagine, but what she could imagine what it would feel like to be a recently, well, not recently freed, enslaved person who took their freedom. Um, but one of the biggest things for me was, or I guess what I became aware of while reading it, is how slavery affected love and what it means to have the freedom to love. That love is a condition of freedom itself. Like, for instance, like if you knew your children or partner were going to be stripped away from you, how could you truly allow yourself to love them? Like, they go into those different moments and feelings of it. Or even like, if your children are the result of the atrocity of a master, how can you truly see them as yours, as something that you can love? If you're seen as someone else's property, how can you even love yourself, because that's what slaves were. They were property. Um, they even go into, so one of the main characters remembers when she was younger and she was on a different plantation, how she was not raised by the mother that birthed her. There was no like maternal instinct, or not instinct, she wasn't seen as that maternal figure because the children were raised communally by one specific slave. The mothers that birthed them were detached in a sense, but you understand why they were detached, because how could they allow themselves to love a child that would eventually be taken away from them? And so I for that's really the main reason why I wanted to bring this story to you guys, because I never, because of, I guess, the freedom that I grew up in and what I was born with, I had never been put into the mindset of needing to condition my love in a sense. But then they also discuss mental instability, and how being enslaved can really alter your mental state. And then when you become freed, how do you get that stability back? Like, how do you find that not only within yourself, but in the community that you're in? Because you never know if you're truly free. And that's similar to what happened to Margaret Garner. That's what happened to one of the characters, which is what you find out later in the story, is that she sees the masters, they called him school teacher, coming up the road, and that's why she reacted the way that she did. There was no way she was going to allow her kids to be taken back into slavery, nor herself. And so while the characters may not have necessarily agreed with the actions, they deeply understood why she did what she did. But the mental instability of all of that comes into play because of the haunting, because of a spirit, because in the Black community we believe in spirits and bad juju in a sense, and what that can do to someone to have to feel the need to do that to their own child rather than sending them back to something that is worse. Like, you know in your heart and your spirit that death is better than being sent back to slavery. And so the story is very hard to read. I think that's most of Toni Morrison's story, but I think it puts you into a perspective that you would never sat down to think about, honestly. And another point of discussion with that mental instability is, one of the characters he cannot determine like whether it's his screams he's hearing or the screams from his past. He considers his heart like a metal tin that he can put all the pain inside and not have to think about. So that's his way of coping. While others go to the church, they have their community, or others tend to try to choose to be alone. And so, without giving too much, I think one of the solutions that comes from it is going to your community, is kind of not necessarily speaking the atrocities out loud, because you don't want to bring that to everyone's forefront again, but being able to kind of talk about what you're going through internally, to then help yourself and free yourself. They also talk about resting, and how that is also a condition of freedom, like being able to truly rest, and like what you do in that rest. Because if you're getting up every day to till the ground, to take care of the animals, to do all of that, you're not necessarily having the capability to enjoy the sunshine or the rain or the smell of grass or enjoying the food that you grew from the ground. And so another question I have for you guys is, what is freedom to you? Knowing now that like love is a condition of freedom, resting is a condition of freedom, what would you consider a condition of freedom that you may not have necessarily ever thought that was a part of that?
I just heard a discussion actually on free will, and they were bringing up like the definition of how free will is like being able to have a choice to do something without an external force being enacted on you. And I thought that was interesting. Like, even from your story, you in here that, you know, the love of the child, she had the free will to even like, you know, take her child's life, but not the free will, the dynamic of not having the free will to make the decisions to like not be enslaved. Like it's really interesting
Mm.
the story and that dynamic of free will and how it's put between the two people, like the two decisions. And I don't know. I think that's a really interesting story. And you're talking about freedom. Sorry, say it again. What?
Yeah, like what is freedom to you? Um, Knowing now that I don't want to use the word privilege because of the way we use it in terms of the rest of the dynamics of our society and culture, but knowing that like because we were born into this freedom, there are things that we haven't had to think about because it wasn't really taken away from us in a sense. Not to say that there aren't things that we aren't free to do, but like what is there something that you just never really considered as a condition of your freedom that you may be aware of now?
For me, I would say like something that I've always considered is like the freedom of movement. Like as a black man in America, I'm always super conscious of like where I'm moving. And living in a state like Maryland, it's a little bit different. But then, for example, um, you know driving down south and maybe going off of the main 95 corridor, hitting some of the back roads to maybe drive through like Appalachia. I feel like there's a definite privilege to being able to do that and experience just what is the natural beauty and wonders of that this world has to offer. But as a black person, there's a lot of anxiety in doing that because what if I make the wrong turn? Like, what if I end up in an area that I don't belong? Like, I don't know, Jamar and Next, y'all remember when we went to that cabin up in Tennessee? How like that was uncomfortable and uneasy because what if we make the wrong turn and you hear what y'all doing around here? You know what I mean? And so it's like that freedom of movement has always been something that I envied. Like we have, but we don't.
So
Mm.
I'll piggyback off of that, especially since you brought up Tennessee, but also when we were in North Carolina, Saluda, which is outside of Asheville. Even then, like I honestly I don't sleep well at night in those spaces because I'm just not used to being in a space where we're the only two with chocolate chips on a snickerdoodle, as Perla would say. Uh, so like yeah, like that. But I think even going off of what you said, Rob, like going a little deeper, just the freedom of thought because every day I'm constantly thinking like, how am I being perceived by the outside world? Like walking through Baltimore, even though Baltimore is a very black centric city, if I'm behind somebody who isn't black, I'm worried like, how are they perceiving me? Or even sometimes when I'm walking with somebody who is black, I'm like, are they gonna rob me? Like, are they cool? Like, so like even that thought process is something that like I feel like sometimes I'm a prisoner of, and I would love to break free from, but it's just the way our society is built.
I would also like to add to that. It has me thinking if we ever had the freedom outside of trauma bonding, because we're always like there is always this thread that connects Black people, and I just wonder if we've ever experienced life outside of that internal understanding that we all have of, I guess, what our skin represents to people who don't look like us. And yeah, that's wow. Sorry, Whitney. I'm just thinking really, really deep on the cost of freedom, what that means, and how even being enslaved, not only physically, but mentally, can really warp your reality
Mm-hmm.
and not really have you you're not really present really like you're still stuck in the shackles in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the cost of slavery is something that I haven't really thought too much about, but also if we've ever really truly if we're ever truly free mentally, because we're all of us here are Black, we all have common thread, right? So yeah, wow, thank you. I don't even need this caffeine anymore.
No, I mean,
Hey, say this, but
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say what it sounds like is that even for us, there are conditions on our freedom that like you said, the cost of slavery wasn't just a physical cost, it was a mental cost too. Like enslavement didn't just affect a person's body, it affected their mind, it affected the future generations that we are now a part of, and like everything that happened to those people are ingrained within our society and culture and how we operate and move today. And so I would say like there's a lyric in an NDRE song, and I forget what the name of the song is, but she says like, it doesn't cost a thing to smile. And so it's like that's one thing that I think of like as a freedom that I have that my ancestors didn't necessarily have because they weren't able to smile or have joy or to be free to laugh in that sense. Like there was a limit and condition to that. So I would say think of the small things that you do have the freedom to do that we definitely take advantage of every day. That not only like our ancestors weren't able to do, but there are people out in the world still who don't have those freedoms, to have that joy or to be able to move around with some limited freedom. Um, so yeah, I don't really want to like bring you guys down, but the story was there's a lot in it. So it wasn't my toughest read from Toni Morrison, but it was eye opening for sure.
You know what's interesting? Obviously, freedom is something that we long for. And song that's coming to mind for me is like J. Cole's song, "Be Free." All we want to do is be free. But at the same time, if if we, if after the emancipation and America actually truly lived up to what it was supposed to promise us, and we were truly and really free and didn't have to go through Jim Crow and all of that, right? And in this ideal society, would Black Americanism or blackness in America exist to the extent that it does? Because I mean, I even think, Jamar, to your example of like not being sort of still captive mentally and understanding yourself in the relationship of space, like that's, I mean, what you described is Du Bois' idea of double consciousness, and like that to me is an essential and very authentic um, creation of what Black identity is, and not only how we perceive ourselves, but how we think that others perceive us. And so there, I think there are these things that are effects from slavery and that are been passed down, but also gave birth to a very specific, a very small percentage of culture of people that exist in the world. But like at the same time, there is no denying the impact that Black American culture has on like the greater extent of the world.
Mm-hmm. I would say there would still be a sense of a Black Americanism simply because of the mental impacts that happened for slavery. Like even if they gave us what they owed us in like a tangible sense, we would still be battling the mental issues that were caused.
And there would still be like that separation between, you know, the the white people. Well, maybe three separations between the white people who had, the white people who couldn't, who tried to aspire to that, and then black people who were removed from that economy.
Mm-hmm.
So there would still be a distinct black existence, I think, because you look different. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and plus again, I think that the trauma being property, that still gets passed down. No matter what. Like people say, don't forget. Just like when anything happens, they're like, don't forget that this happened. Never forget. Never forget. And I think that would still be very present in the Black community. Yeah, we might look differently. It might not be as universal, but I think it would still be something that would be a talking point.
And another point is there's still going to be people outside of America coming to America. Well, with this president, I'm not sure, but there's still going to be people coming in with brand new perspectives that, after some time, they're going to either know a bit more about the history and unfortunately choose a side, whether or not they want to be part of a community that has that bond or just live their life on their own terms, ignoring the reality of the existence of that trauma bond.
Yeah, so we can wrap this conversation up. Again, I'm sorry to bring a downer to the group, but I will say, just to close it out, the book's dedication reads 60 million and more, referring to the Africans and their descendants who died as a result of the Atlantic slave trade. And so it goes into, again, that decision of what would you do for love of others and love of yourself, to not be put in a situation that is considered worse than death to a lot. So, thank you.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Dropping some. I think you won. You definitely considered deeply and pontificated greatly. So thank you for sharing, and thank y'all for joining us for another episode. This is one of not a typical episode that we usually do. It's a freestyle. It's jazz music. It's a BET cipher. So hope you enjoyed the product. So we'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
Hey everybody! Thank you for listening to this episode of Autoblack. If you have enjoyed the discussion, please hit that subscribe button or follow button, whatever you'd like. Autoblack is a discussion-based podcast that is unapologetically Black at the intersection of design and culture. We acknowledge that our experiences are just that, our experience, but your voice is worth elevating and your perspective is valid. So please join the conversation and connect with us on Instagram at Autoblack_podcast, or email us your thoughts, comments, and even future topics you'd like us to discuss on the stoop at autoblackpodcast@gmail.com. Autoblack out. Bye!